Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Hunt from the Bullvine. I'm glad that you could join us for the webinar today, where we can learn more about the wellness traits, what's been the results have been in field trials, as well as other applications. With that, it is my pleasure to help a little more information on CLARIFIDE Plus. We are coming up on almost 2 years since they first introduced CLARIFIDE Plus. The wellness traits really got a lot of people really excited about the potential, the profitability of what these could mean for the average dairy producer. And with that, it is my honor to have both Cheryl Marty, who is with the U.S. Marketing of the dairy genetics and reproductive products for Zoetis, plus Dr. Anthony McNeil, who is a senior scientist with the technical services at Zoetis, that are here today to kind of walk us through what the results have been, kind of show us how it's been working, and answer any questions you might have. Cheryl?
Well, hello everybody. I'm Cheryl Marty, and I'm excited to share some time with my colleague Dr. Tony McNeil today to be able to share some new information with you that has people talking. As Andrew mentioned, people are talking since we came out with the CLARIFIDE Plus 2 years ago, starting in March that would have been. And so that was the first commercially available genetic evaluation for wellness traits in U.S. Holsteins. So in addition, the industry has seen genomic tested animals raised to over 2 million in the U.S. That means there's a lot of animals out there that have been genomic tested, and if you've not started, there's a lot of catching up to do. There's actually some producers that have been whole herd testing for over 5 years. So since the launch of the wellness traits, we continue to learn and lead in the knowledge that we've gained to share with the industry about such things as the cutting edge methodologies that we're using with single step. And we're going to share with you today possibly the first and only field trial results of this nature on Holsteins. So let's take a look. This also was something exciting we learned last week, that we had the Editor's Choice article chosen with this information that you'll hear later on. And that was with the Journal of Dairy Science. So today I'll begin by sharing a review of why these traits were developed and why you can trust and rely on these wellness traits that are only found in CLARIFIDE Plus. And then I'll turn it over to Dr. Tony McNeil in our Global Tech Services team to share with you the field study that I was referring to, followed by a brief application that I'll talk through. And finally, we'll take questions at the end of the call, and we'll also have on hand Dr. Dan Weigel from our Outcomes Research team and David Erf from our Technical Services team in the U.S. So let's get started. We take a look. So what kind of cows do most producers look for? Well, it can really vary from producer to producer. The majority of those that I've talked with over the years are really looking for that invisible kind of cow. That cow that milks a lot, she breeds back every year, she has no health problems. She basically does it every day without you even noticing her. So we believed over 5 years ago there was a better way to select for more of these invisible kind of cows. And to improve dairy wellness, that's not only good for the cows, but also great in the eyes of our consumers, because when genomic technology and selection is applied, it can result in a healthier group of cows. So what is it about that invisible cow that we might like? Well, longevity and profitability and productivity drives that decision. So if we take a look at this graph, this is a very typical herd where you can see the average pounds of milk per cow per day, looking at 305M and dairy comp in this particular situation. We can also look at the lactation number. So if we look at where do the cows make the most milk per day, it's those cows in that 3rd through 6th lactation roughly. And you can go herd after herd and this will be the case. So how do we drive more cows into this area versus in the first lactation? Well, that's changing some of the herd composition. And with genomic technology, now we can select what we want and keep the animals that we want to help change some of those dynamics. So this herd here, as an example, had over 40% of their herd when we viewed it in the first lactation. So if we can change that dynamic to being maybe 35%, let's say, that'll change and mean that there's more cows in this 3rd through 5th lactation. There are herds today that are doing that. And if we take a look at the impact of the dairy cow illnesses on dairies, it is really, it's real and it's very significant, as evidenced by this plethora of research that illustrates, first of all, the incidence ranges, that you see here, and there's a lot of different research studies noted. High cost of treatment, this is on a per case basis. So again, this is only one time. That doesn't mean, and they're also at higher risk to getting disease again later. And then also there's also higher risk of culling when they have a case of any one of these diseases. So, and this doesn't even go to say that, you know, sometimes cows never even get DHI tested before they are gone and realize these fresh cow diseases. So improving health or wellness traits by including genetic selection as part of the overall management practice represents a real compelling opportunity for dairy producers to help manage animal health when combined with sound husbandry practices. So we introduced to the market, as I mentioned earlier, in March 2016, CLARIFIDE Plus, that was specifically designed for wellness traits in the U.S. Holstein cattle. We had a desire for something better to help improve health and wellness of cows, increase saleable milk, and reduce the drain on labor while improving productivity and profitability. We wanted to build it on over 60 years experience that we had in animal health, and by combining it with the know-how of our geneticist team, which all then we introduced CLARIFIDE Plus. So CLARIFIDE Plus is also a foundation. If you think about Zoetis and what we stand for, it's really about dairy wellness. First, you need healthy animals in dairies to prevent or reduce the risk and avoid cutting into that much-earned paycheck. So with CLARIFIDE Plus, we can help producers more quickly improve reproduction and have more productive cows with healthier hooves and better quality milk, all which are outcomes that are desired by producers that we talk about. And if herds have healthier animals, they're more likely to have healthier dairies, meaning they're more financially sound. In addition, there are other aspects of healthy dairies that can be financially improved with Genomic, namely inventory management decisions, and also by prioritizing mating decisions that weigh the dice in your favor. And finally, if you have healthier animals, the consumer may be happier from the value of purchasing food from herds where they feel more comfortable the animals are more healthy. And so from a dairy perspective, though, too, it also reduces the risk of residues because now we've got healthier animals which don't need as many treatments. Just as a review, CLARIFIDE Plus does feature 6 new wellness traits that are listed here in the middle. And one easy method that we have brought together is the Dairy Wellness Profit Index that combines all of the information in one easy animal ranking index that can be then used as a comprehensive way to prioritize how you apply the strategies, which we'll talk about at the very end of this discussion. So where are we 1 year later? Well, there's a lot of enthusiasm and recognition that health and wellness improvement is really important, and you can do it through genetics. There's also been a lot of enthusiasm then with the use of CLARIFIDE Plus, so we've seen a lot of herds start with that. So it might actually bring up some confusion too as far as what's important. So we're going to talk about some of the things that are important when looking at any new traits that might come to market. So if we think about that, because there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes they're not all the same, so we can't treat all traits as being the same. So the important questions that we pondered as we consider new traits, there's 3 primary ones. One is how relevant are the traits and the data that goes into it, meaning is the data just like what you are, coming from herds just like yourself. Another point is how accurate is the information, and we can measure that by reliability. And is the data and the processes and everything about it that you're getting, is that proven? Has it been proven through evaluation methods, maybe some field trials and so forth? So we'll get into that next. So what do we mean by that? From a relevancy perspective, you could break it into a few different areas. Kent Weigel mentioned this one to me. Are the traits meaningful? So number 1, are they economically important? And do they have a lot of value? So yes, the 6 new traits that we introduced, they definitely are. And includes the 2 most costly disease events in dairy herds, and that's mastitis and lameness. And are the economics are also mostly in the $200 to $300 cost per case, and as high as almost $500 for DA. So very economically important. Is the data relevant? Well, the data that we use in CLARIFIDE Plus was pulled together from herds just like yours, U.S. commercial herds using primarily U.S. pedigree bulls. And this is actually really important because we know information and pedigrees from other countries, especially places in Europe and the Pacific, have lower relationships to the U.S. herd. And we've seen in other traits that genetic predictions from those sources don't line up as well. We also know that herds are also almost entirely from large herds in our database, which is especially useful when it comes to health traits, where either an animal is documented as having a disease or she doesn't. And we work closely with the majority of these herds, and with that, combined with our veterinarian experts working with our geneticists, we have a better understanding of how to interpret this raw data to decipher the useful, make sure that it's useful and the useful data from the non-useful data, I guess you could say. And finally, we make it simple for consumers and customers to use these new traits by offering it within the Dairy Wellness Profit Index that we'll share later. As a deeper dive into looking at the number of records that we have here, you can see here that we have millions of records in the database, so that's a really key part of that. And I will point out this is the edited number, meaning more than twice the amount of data we started with, and we cut it down and brought it down to these numbers, because we know not every herd records every trait, and we know sometimes some herds might stop recording information and start again later, so we have to also sort through those types of things. And we believe this is one of the most important steps in developing genetic evaluations. In addition, you can see we also have over 300 genotypes. In fact, actually, that continues to rise. It's well over 350,000 genotypes now in the system. And we will launch this a year and a half ago. That was just over 100,000. So we've also increased that. Another reason you can rely on CLARIFIDE Plus data is that it's accurate. If you take a look at, we can measure that based on reliability factors, and you can estimate that accuracy from that. Not only do we have and supply the reliabilities, which is critical to know if the data is worth looking at or not, but we have the best-in-class reliabilities to date. This is due to the strong heritabilities that you'll see, and we'll show you that information, the millions of edited records that we use, and the cutting-edge methodologies that we use, which is single-step, developed by the University of Georgia. So let's look at the heritability and the reliability a little bit more closely. First of all, the heritability measures are all within that 6 to 8% range, which is tremendous, seeing some other areas of the world and the values that they have. And if you think about the fitness traits such as DPR, which is one that we've talked about quite a bit with dairies, that's in the 4% range, and there's some even lower than that. So we've got some really good heritabilities for these health events. And this, along with other reasons stated earlier, we're achieving reliabilities that you see here that are averaging 50 or more on young heifer groups. And that's important. You want to look at that factor because that is where the decisions are being made the most on dairies. And so, again, this makes our data over 70% accurate when it comes from an accuracy perspective. The other reason you can rely on CLARIFIDE Plus is that it's proven. And we've worked really hard to do this because we know that producers want to have answers and they want to know that this is going to work and it's going to be worth their investment in doing. Because not all traits are made alike, nor do they have the same results. So we, first of all, made the decision to share this information, and we were very transparent about it. We've had one published study that was put out in January 2017 in the Journal of Dairy Science. Again, that's a peer-reviewed journal. And with that, we described the methodologies and how we edited the data and so forth. Finally, we'll show you next how we took this a step further by proving that these traits work by doing a study in real herds and putting our results to the test. So now it's time for me to turn it over to Dr. Tony McNeil in our Global Genetics Technical Services team.
Thank you, Cheryl. Really appreciate everybody turning out today. We're really excited to present this information to you. was just recently published in the Journal of Dairy Science in the November issue. And as Cheryl alluded to earlier, we received some really good feedback from our peers, from the scientific community, when the Journal of Dairy Science selected our publication as one of the selections for Editor's Choice for the month of November. So the objective of the study was to demonstrate the effectiveness of the wellness trait predictions outside of the genetic evaluation system. So what that means is we're really pushing these predictions to their limit. We want to see how much we can push them before they break. And I'm happy to report, folks, I couldn't break them. So in this study, we ended up enrolling 11 herds that were geographically distributed across the United States. And what we did is we targeted the major dairy-producing regions of the U.S. because we wanted to make sure, we really wanted to demonstrate that these predictions will work regardless of your location. Our target sample size per herd was 300, and we ranged from 250 to 350 animals per herd. Overall, we sampled 3,567 animals, and we ended up dropping just shy of 700. And the main reason that we would exclude an animal from the study is that their realized calving date was after the target end. So to be enrolled in the study, the animal had to have calved between September 1st, 2015 and December 31st, 2015. And we used projected calving date to make those selections. And so what we're seeing is a disconnect between projected and realized, and that's why those 700 animals ended up being dropped. In the end, we had 2,875 animals, with roughly 66% being springing heifers, and the remainder, the other 33%, being first lactation transitioning into second lactation cows. So we sampled these cows before they calved. We weren't aware of what they were going to perform in the upcoming lactation. How we define what is healthy and affected is a key consideration. A healthy record, and we have multiple records per animal here, so we're maintaining each lactation record separately. A healthy record is an instance where the management team did not record the animal as having experienced that health event for that lactation. A diseased animal is the opposite, is that the management team said, yeah, she's had a RP, yeah, that's a case of mastitis, that's a case of metritis. Our last category is excluded. And it's primarily those cows that, they are healthy, they've never exhibited a case of the health event, but for some reason they left the herd before they've had sufficient exposure. So a good example of this would be a cow that died or is sold on day 10 of milk. So we know that her observations for retained placenta and metritis are solid, but for DAs, ketosis, mastitis, and lameness, she just didn't have enough production days on the farm for us to really feel confident that healthy observation was real. And so those animals get assigned to an excluded category, and it's just a dot, and from a statistical standpoint, the algorithm or the math ignores that observation. So we're looking at a 0 and 1. It's a yes or no question. What that also does is these results are most likely an underestimation in terms of performance. We're being very conservative on the relationships that we're seeing between the predictions and subsequent performance. So this first graph is retained placenta. And I'm a very linear person. I like to think in chronological order. So we'll start with retained placenta and we'll work through all the wellness traits as the cows experience them. So from RP, what we saw is animals in the worst genetic group had an overall incidence of 4.45%. The superscripts, those letter values next to the numerical values, indicate significant differences at the 0.05 level. So 4.45% is not different from a 3.34%, but a 4.45% is different from a 2.48 or a 1.58. So we're seeing that the incidence of retained placenta decreases with genetic group. Now, to get to be assigned to a genetic group, we use the standardized transmitting abilities for the health events, or for the wellness traits. This is a standardized transmitting ability where a 100 represents average relative risk. Standard deviation is 5, and a higher value is more desirable. So you can see for the worst genetic group, the average STA in that group was a 93.6, whereas in our best genetic group, it was slightly more than 106. And the significant differences there, that's just me showing my work, double-checking that, these groups were really genetically different, and that the relationship is true, that as the wellness trait predictions go up, the incidence goes down. So that was good. We were really happy to see this early on in the study. And now we just had to let time elapse for the rest of the health events to occur, which the next one would be metritis. We translate this into economic costs. We multiply the cost per case, in this case published by Gard in 1999, multiply that cost per case by the incidence for the genetic group. We can see that animals in the bottom 25% on average cost is $9.30, where animals in the top 25% cost the producer $3.26. Similar story with metritis. The worst genetic group at 23.64% incidence of metritis with a 93.7 average STA, was our best group at a 106.1 STA and a 12.86 incidence of metritis. Now you can see in the middle there's a little bit of flipping, and that's okay. The reliabilities on these predictions are 50%. It's similar to heifer conception rate that we have from the CDCB, but again, these animals are not completely proven. This is just with genomic information. So it wasn't too surprising that we had a little bit of noise there in the middle. We translate these into economic costs. We see that on average, cows in the bottom 25% cost the producer just shy of $71 per animal, or in the top 25%, those animals cost the producer $38.58. Ketosis is the same story. The worst 25% had a higher incidence than the best 25%, a nice linear trend right through the middle. And you can see significant differences as indicated by the superscripts next to the values. We can see herd effects here. We can see the effects of differences in nutrition and ration, and that's okay. You're still going to pick it up. We translate this to economic costs, and it's $3.75 per cow versus $1.73 per cow. Displaced abomasum. Displaced abomasum is a bit of a fun one to talk about, not because I particularly enjoy doing a DA surgery, but just to see the strength of this prediction. The worst 25% was a 1.13% incidence, while their best 25% was less than 0.1% in overall incidence. We know that it has a low incidence within our dairy population in the United States, but this prediction works incredibly well. Relative risk between the worst 25% and the bottom 25% is 17. Animals in the worst 25% were 17 times more likely to experience a DA than animals in the best 25%. When we translate this into economic costs, those cows in the bottom 25% end up costing us $5.58 per animal, whereas animals in the top 25% cost us a bit more than a quarter an animal. Last two traits, probably the ones that everybody likes to talk about the most, mastitis and lameness. We talked about them last just because they take the longest time to develop. Mastitis, we observed incidence of 15.94% in the bottom 25%, and 8.53% in the best 25%. We can see a nice tendency for linearity in the middle, but that's not different from a statistical standpoint. Or roughly a reduction in half in terms of the incidence between the worst and best groups. In terms of economic costs, $33.63 per animal for the worst 25% or the bottom 25%, and $18 for the top 25%. Roughly half the expenses between those two genetic groups. And last but not least is lameness. For our worst genetic group, our bottom 25%, we see an overall incidence of 11.43%, and our best 25% is 7.55. So 11 animals out of every 100 experiencing a lameness versus 7, maybe 8 in the best 25%. And this will continue to evolve and get better as time moves on because these are young animals. The lameness takes a long time to develop, and we expect that these differences become larger moving forward. In terms of economic costs, to date, these cows would have incurred $20.23 in the bottom 25%, whereas the top 25% have incurred costs of $13.37. Relative differences between the worst 25% and the best 25%, we're seeing a 64% differential in retained placenta and $6 in terms of economic costs. For metritis, 45% and a $32 differential. Ketosis, 53% and a $2 differential. DAs, a 94% difference in the incidence of displaced saddlemaces to date, represents a $5.23 cost differential. Mastitis, a 47% difference, and roughly $15.63. Last but not least is lameness at 33% and a $6.80 cost difference. Now, when we compare the worst group to our best group, we get an odds ratio, or it's relative risk between these two groups. For retained placenta, what we see is that in terms of odds ratios, animals in the worst 25% are 2.9, or almost 3 times more likely to experience an RP than animals in the best 25%. Metritis was 2.1, ketosis 2.2, DAs, as I mentioned previously, 17.1, mastitis is 2.0, and lameness was 1.6. So on average, across the different traits, animals in the worst genetic group were roughly twice as likely to experience a health event than animals in the best genetic group. Some additional analyses that were not included within the publication at the Journal of Dairy Science is we've had producers and customers ask us, what does 1 point equal? What's that worth? So when we run the regression between the STA and the health event, we get an appreciation for how the incidence goes down as the STA goes up. And this is exactly what we wanted to see. We wanted to see this negative slope in terms of incidence as the STA increases. So now we can make selection decisions and breeding decisions so we can start to breed these events out of our cattle. The last analysis that we've performed to date is when we classify animals or assign them to a genetic group based on their wellness trait dollar value. And then we analyze the number of health events that those cows experience. And we can see that genetic group was statistically different. Again, our target is 0.05, and with this analysis, we're at 0.0002. So good significance here. For the worst 25%, roughly 0.6 health events per cow, whereas animals in the best 25% is just below 0.5. So we're seeing a reduction and the number of health events that a cow experiences as wellness trait dollars goes up. To summarize, CLARIFIDE Plus predictions do translate to real performance differences. This isn't just a value on paper. This is a value on paper that will translate to differences in health events and ultimately differences in how much these cows are costing us. Provide the evidence that these wellness trait predictions available within CLARIFIDE Plus will effectively predict future health performance. Also demonstrates that the top 25% of animals are on average over twice as likely to stay healthy for the respective health event compared to animals in the bottom 25%. And lastly, improving the wellness traits through direct genetic selection presents a compelling opportunity for dairy producers to help manage these disease incidents and improve profitability when coupled with sound management practices. Let me repeat that again. Coupling genetic selection with sound management practices will help us reduce the incidence and have a healthier, more productive herd.
Great. Well, let's take a look at the application now of using these wellness traits on dairies. So as we mentioned throughout here, we have two indexes. One was the wellness trait index that includes just those new 6 wellness traits plus the economic value for the poultry. The Dairy Wellness Profit Dollar Index includes not only those wellness traits, but it also includes in the production traits, the fertility and the calf and health and calving information, as well as some type traits, all of those that are existing in net merit dollars today. And we put those into using selection index theory to develop to weight these appropriately and not overcount or double count any of the traits. So this is then used, this is one of the key concepts that are really important in using genomic technology, and that's having that single, simple value that you can turn to and rank the animals on. So the Dairy Wellness Profit Dollars is an excellent tool to do that. It is our most important index, and it does incorporate everything so that you can get the best profitability in the future. From there, then, the key is in applying that ranking to a strategy. So there's 2 primary strategies that get utilized. One is to more precisely manage your inventory, particularly heifers. Today, in the lives of cash flow and trying to manage a lot of costs, heifers is one of either number 2 or number 3, depending on the dairy cost on it that you have. And so if we can better manage how many heifers that we raise and make sure we're raising the right ones, kind of like you're picking your employees or you're trying to choose a football team or your favorite sports team, we don't need or want everybody. We want to be able to choose the ones that are the best for your herd situation. And that's what we can do, and that's one of the big things we can help improve cash flow on dairies. The second way is to then apply it from a breeding perspective. What kind of semen do we want to use? How many animals do we want? How many females do we want out of this animal? And should some of them maybe carry, for instance, in the bottom half, should they carry an embryo for one of the elite animals in your herd or purchasing from outside? And maybe you're using sex semen only in the top half because it costs more and that's a good investment, but maybe you need to prioritize these investments that you have so that you're getting more with the money that you have to invest. So that's really the idea here, is to try to get more from the best, less from the lower end, and manage your inventory. And finally, corrective mating animals is the other part of that, to maximize the results and to minimize the risks from inbreeding, from matching deleterious recessives, and so forth. A lot of people also ask, well, what's the economics behind this? Well, let's just take a look at, we developed a model with Dave Galligan utilizing the genetic progress formula that's been in existence for decades. And we used that, put it in the model, incorporated the different components of it, so reliability goes into it. The standard deviation of your profitability index goes into it. And then the choice of what your strategy is goes into it. This is all just developed for the female side of that. With that then, if we take a look first at net merit that people are familiar with, if we compare and use a strategy, we're keeping only the top 85% of the females versus as replacements. We're not raising all of them. We're keeping the best 85%. And if we compare it then to no selection and considering, the cost of this, the value of money doesn't matter, it's 0%. If we look at just then that value above the cost of genomic testing with CLARIFIDE, that value is over $386 per kept female. Again, that's $386 per kept female. That's huge. That's a huge dollar. Then if you compare it to parent average, another alternative that's on the market at zero investment, this is now also considering we're going to give that value of that investment a cost. And we're going to say we're going to compare it to, let's say you could put $2,000 in either the bank and let it grow at 8% interest, or you can, which would be nice, right? Or you can put it into genomic testing and let's see which one comes out the best. Well, this one is saying here is that it's coming out $51 better than parent average that's being used. And again, that's above all of the costs already in that. So if you took the cost, it should be about $100, right? So again, this is above all the costs, and this is per kept female. It's a great investment, but can we do better? Well, that's what this is going to show here. So because of because Dairy Wellness Profit Dollars encompasses a lot more, includes the top two most costly diseases in dairy herds across the country, in mastitis and lameness, and because we can get more also from the other traits, and we're identifying more of that profitability potential in animals. Now we see that these numbers could actually go up, even with a little bit higher investment in the test cost. Not a lot, but a little bit, and it still comes out way ahead. This is almost a no-brainer. It's something that a lot of herds are seeing, and not just is it a good profitability choice, but it's a good choice from a consumer perspective. So really with this, I like to think of this genetic progress and how do we measure that as a way that, how fast or how hard are you pushing down an accelerator in your herd from a genetic progress perspective. And genetic progress measures that, and it also is equivalent more to the profitability once you take out those costs. So, net merit and CLARIFIDE really gets you a long ways, but Dairy Wellness Profit Dollars gets you that much further. So it's really like putting your foot down on faster on that accelerator, if anybody likes to drive fast. All right, so how do we use this information? Well, there are some national animal rankings available for Dairy Wellness Profit Dollars and for Wellness Trait Dollars. So on the Holstein USA website, you can see that there's rankings for DWP dollars and wellness traits, and they're broken out into two fashions. One is by the proven bulls, so those have daughter proofs in type and production, so the same criteria is used there as the TPI list. And then the second grouping is by the genomic tested bulls. So if they're active and available, and they're on that list, so that's, again, 4 steps there. On the female side, we're working towards doing something similar from a list perspective, but what we have today is a percentile tables, and this is on our CLARIFIDEPlus.com website under the resources section. And in there, if you click on this section here, you'll find that it'll give you the most recent documents, so you'll be able to see by birth year when they were born, the lowest number, which is 0 percentile, up to the 100th, so it's top ranking. You can see the best 1% and where that cutoff is. So all of that is there for the DWP dollars and the wellness trait dollars, and then we have it for each of the individual wellness traits. Those won't be broken out by birth year, but because they're very similar. So in summary, if I take what Tony has talked about in the introduction that we had earlier, you saw early on that profitability is really important, and those cows that are older in that 3rd to 5th lactation, they give more milk. They give about 25% more milk than the first lactation heifers. And when your paycheck comes, we know that marginal milk is king. The more milk per unit that you have is going to help you an awful lot in the end. And we also know that cows and heifers that avoid those health events are going to net more milk than those that don't. That's just plain and simple. We also know that wellness traits have become popular, and we've been, working really hard with our not applying the things that we've learned in animal health, and applying those into what we know in the geneticists, and putting those together to provide a product in CLARIFIDE Plus that is not only relevant, but it's also accurate and proven. We also see therefore then we can say that CLARIFIDE Plus predictions do translate into real performance differences, as Tony went through a lot of the research that we just had published. So those producers do need to keep up on the industry as it progresses, and genomic testing is one of those things that's becoming the need to do. And so we'd love to be able to help producers do that. We work very closely on the dairies to help you get set up and started. So we'd love to be able to help you do that. So there's a few other resources if you'd like to reach out to anyone, but we'll take questions from here. Andrew, back to you.
Okay. Sorry, I had to unmute my mic. So we have had some questions come in. I was just organizing them as we spoke there, but be sure to enter them in the chat box if you are looking to get your questions answered, or email them to webinars@thebovine.com. The first question that's come in is, based on the results, how far apart does an evaluation need to be? It seems that you need to be either in the bottom 25 or top 25 percentile rank in order to see any significant incident rate change. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Tony and I both take that. I think part of it depends on the herd, right? So if you have a higher incidence of the disease, you may see a bigger spread. Tony, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, no, you're right, Cheryl. The higher the incidence in the health event, the more dramatic the separation is. And those graphs should really help people understand is that as we select for these STAs, as we continue to drive up the average STA value for a herd, the incidence of that health event is going to go down. So don't think of it in terms of seeing significant differences. Realize that genetics is a cumulative or an additive effect, in that what we do across time by selecting our animals impacts the incidence of our health events and overall profitability, so that by moving the STA, we can start to eliminate some of these health events, or at the very least reduce the incidence within the herd.
The other thing, too, you might want to consider also with that is that, we don't want to have single trait selection. We really, again, focused on that index. So, if it's a marginal difference in ketosis, it really shouldn't be used, in the decision making. It really should focus on the DWP dollars, which is taking all of that into mind. And then when you do have more of those extremes, it will come through in that ranking. And again, depending on your strategies, it'll make or break, what animals show up in those different portions of the herd where you make those decisions.
Okay, and a follow-on question to that has come in is, given the difference, would it be accurate to say that traits like metritis or mastitis would be able to see greater genetic gain than those of, say, ketosis or retained placentas?
I would say that your genetic gain is going to be a reflection of how much emphasis you're putting on that trait within your selection index. So for Dairy Wellness Profit, we feel like we've done a pretty good job of balancing what drives income and what drives costs. And the weights that we apply to our traits are reflective of that. We can, as Cheryl kind of alluded to, if you go down the route of single trait selection, you can really select for a specific trait. But we did that in the 80s and 90s by selecting for milk, and we don't want to repeat that. We want healthy, profitable, quiet cows that we forget about until she's 8 years of age, and we say, wow, she's still here. Well, yeah, because you've only seen her at calving, at breeding, daily for milking, but she doesn't have a case of mastitis. She's not on the foot trimmer table getting her hooves cleaned up. She doesn't have a DA. She's just a nice, quiet, productive cow, and that's what we're trying to do with Dairy Wellness Profit, is select for those healthy, productive, profitable cattle.
Okay. And then one question that comes in is, based on your increased in profitability chart, does that mean the difference in expected return from Clarified versus Clarified Plus would be $37.06? Someone got out their calculator, based on an 85% female retention program?
So you're referring to this graph here. So the gain, so this is over a 10-year period of time. So if we compare DWP dollars to net merit dollars, and that's, in each of these situations, they were being compared to the parent average for those traits, which in reality, there is no parent average for DWP dollars. This is probably a low estimate. But yes, we would expect that we're going to gain about $30 more in lifetime profitability by using Dairy Wellness Profit dollars if you're comparing it to parent average. If you're comparing it to, there's no interest rate, there's no value of your money that you're investing, and it's compared to no selection, that, you're not doing anything today on the female side, you're just culling as they come in, then there's, almost a $90 gain. So it's, there is real value there. So it's roughly those values, and as net merit changes, that'll change a little bit. So yeah, that's some rough estimates on that.
Okay. And then another question that came in is, for the percentile rank tables, the 100th percentile, would that necessarily represent the top 100 females, or would it be a larger group than that?
So if we go to, so looking at that number, that would have been as of that evaluation date, so this was in August of 2017. The highest number based on the information that we have would be that, yes, I can't read that number, maybe it's 1340 or something like that, maybe the highest animal out there. Now, I will qualify to say that there's some animals that may have gotten tested somewhere else prior to this and then had wellness traits only, so we won't have that in the mix, but this is going to be probably 98% of the animals that have DWP dollars out there. So it's going to be a pretty strong reflection of where they would rank.
Okay. And then the one that's come in about 4 or 5 different forms here, so I'll try to summarize them into one question, is, how does these traits differ from other newly introduced health traits for ketosis, mastitis, metritis, DAs, and retained placentas that are out there? Or they're coming out in April 2018, if I add a couple of these questions together.
Correct, right, yeah. So I have Dave Erf and Dan Weigel also on the line here. I'll maybe just start off by prefacing it to say that we know what we've got. We've got a lot of experience with this. We've been very transparent. So getting back to that relevant information, we know this comes from U.S. dairies, large dairies where we work with closely every day. We know that our data is accurate, and we've proven it. And so far, I don't know that anybody else has done all 3 of those major things. So we're very confident in it, and maybe I'll let Dan and Dave add in any discussion that they want to point out on the technical side of things.
And I've unmuted their lines.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrew, this is Dan Weigel. I guess, time will tell on that. But as Cheryl has pointed out, we feel very confident in the predictions we have. We think the real key to those predictions is the work that our people do every day, working with our customers on protocols for identifying disease and procedures to record them. And I think that's made a big impact. And again, we all know that some of the herds we deal with, their data will not flow into the national system, so they're unique in that regard. We have access to these well-managed herds that we can work with.
Dave, do you have anything to add about maybe the heritabilities and reliabilities and things?
This set was designed to kind of cross the country, work with herds that do a very good job of recording the data, as Dan said, and pulling those together. And with that, we got a very large data set that was edited down very meticulously, and that resulted in us getting heritabilities that are 2 to 3 times the average that the traits that are coming out in April will have. And our reliability levels, because our data set is so robust, came out for most of the traits to be about 10 points higher on reliability, which are 2 of the major factors in really identifying your extremes and making some real progress towards it. And the other part that I will emphasize there is putting economics to these diseases. Is how do you account for them? Do you want to account for them directly, or do you want to wait for lower milk production to come in through dropping PTAs in milk for a bloodline that's higher in disease incidence? Our focus was on doing direct selection for these traits and accounting for them that way, just like we've seen done in the past with reproduction. When we first came out with productive life, we had reproduction was thrown into productive life. And we said if we want to make progress for reproduction, we need to pull that out of productive life, which is the approach that we took with these diseases, is let's select for them directly, let's make more progress, let's really address these issues that affect each and every dairy farm that we deal with. So I think those are major differences that we see in the traits that are out there and what will be coming. And we're confident that CLARIFIDE Plus is the one that can account for these diseases, identify them, and give you ways to select directly to make more progress with reducing their incidence.
Moving on with the questions, how close are we to getting wellness traits for other breeds other than Holstein?
Well, I guess we never divulge that type of information, but if there's some herds out there and other breeds that would love to contribute, it does take a lot of data, and we are very committed to not releasing new information without it being solid. And so, if there are some other breeds out there that are interested, we would love to have you sign up and contribute to our database going forward. And we'd love to hear which breeds are asking the questions so we know who they are.
Yeah, so for sure, if you're looking for that, be sure to let us know or reach out, and we can certainly pass on that information to Cheryl and whoever else as we go along. Sorry, I just have to mute a couple lines because of feedback. Okay. And are there any more questions? I'm just going to do a quick check on the email account because we'd had about 3 or 4 come in that way, but we're good there, and we're good in the chat box. So I think that covers most of our questions. Just to let everyone know, the recording will be released tomorrow, so there will be available to everyone who wasn't able to attend, or if you were here today and want to review some of it again, the session will be there. But of course, if you have any further questions, for sure reach out. I'm sure that Cheryl and the team would be more than happy to answer any questions you have or clarify anything that maybe you think about later tonight as you're reviewing what you've heard today. And with
Andrew,
that,
Andrew, I did see one part of the question in the chat there that maybe we didn't address. That was whether or not we're going to have the CDCB health traits in CLARIFIDE Plus. Yes, we're not going to hide that information, so that will be part of that will be shown there as well.
Okay. And so then the traits that are similar, they'll be identified on which ones are CDCB's value for that trait, and obviously which ones are your dairy wellness and CLARIFIDE Plus traits for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed the second part of that questions on there, but thank you. And if there aren't any more questions, I want to say thank you to our presenters today. Certainly a lot of information to go over and a lot of thinking that you have to put into this, and we do appreciate you taking the time to kind of put it in a visual form and share that with us. So thank you, Cheryl and Tony, for doing that today.
Thank you, everybody.
And with that, I want to thank everyone for attending today. As you said, the recording will be available tomorrow, but be sure to reach out if you have any further questions, and please have a great day.